in the forthcoming climate negotiations. Just 2 days ago in Venice, at the G20, technological innovation, green investments, and the coherent regulatory measures will be the key to implement an efficient carbon pricing system supporting countries to phase out of fossil fuel dependency and subsidies, as well as the obsolete system of trade emissions, which do not solve the question of human activities in terms of global warming, as PAM had identified in 2015 in Monaco, as Engineer Ortiz will recall, when we adopted a resolution on a specific carbon added tax for each item being produced. And this approach is in line with what PAM has done since the beginning of its mandate, pushing our parliaments for a green transition across the region. PAM now is pleased to hear of the G20's strengthened commitment to fight climate change and of the effort put in place by many countries to enforce carbon neutrality through post-pandemic recovery strategies. We welcome at PAM this ambitious project and will work to help member states translate their promises into action. For this reason, the Assembly will actively participate in both COP26 and COP22 in its capacity as an intergovernmental organization which represent the parliaments from the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf countries. In this perspective, we are here to discuss together with the senior expert from the leading agencies and organizations on the world the best legislative measures that Parliament could enforce, could use to oversee the work of their respective governments and Ministry of the Environment and preserve our region. It is thus with great pleasure that I welcome you all, and I wish to thank our guest speakers for joining us today. We all at PAM look forward to listening to their presentation and even more to their recommendations and suggestions. Following the expert roundtable, the floor will be open for intervention from parliamentarians. We have 5 speakers for the parliamentary debate, and the others who wish to intervene can raise your hand option as indicated on the documents you received before this event. One technical note before we start: as a courtesy to all our attendees and speakers, please keep your cameras on and your microphones muted off unless speaking. As mentioned, there is an interpretation in English, French, Arabic, and Turkish. I have now the pleasure to give the floor to Honorable Giulio Centemero from Italy. He is the co-chair of the PAM Economic Panel, who will deliver the opening remarks and serve as moderator of this meeting on behalf of the PAM President, Honorable Gennaro Migliore, who is joining us later due to an unforeseen commitment. Giulio, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you for the kind introduction. And as you were saying, I'm substituting President Migliore. He will join us later on. And their friends, excellencies, distinguished guests, and their colleagues, of course. As a co-chair of the PAM Economic Panel, it's my honor to welcome you here today and to serve as moderator in this event dedicated to the role of Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf parliaments in climate negotiations. Allow me to begin by thanking you for joining these consultations. Your presence is definitely the proof of your commitment to your people, the people who you're representing, the people that voted for you. And it is our responsibility as policymakers to push forward the climate agenda at the regional and international levels, other than domestic levels, of course. As you know, in fall, our countries will face important political decisions for the survival of our planet, for the future of our kids. The negotiations will be crucial, considering that during previous meetings, very little has been achieved of what's said, despite the gravity, the severity of the situation and the impact at the global level. In November, the 26th meeting of the contracting parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the so-called COP26, the global community will be asked to deliver on mitigation and adaptation strategies to contrast global warming and environmental degradation. The COP26 UK presidency has chosen to focus the conference on the urgent actions required to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius target decrease. So this will be a landmark, a keyword, 1.5 degrees, with particular attention to the mobilization of climate finance and international carbon markets. As Secretary Piazzi was specifying, new instruments are required, and we're seeing, for example, in finance, but also in industry, ESG being very popular, and financing is believing in them. And of course, also the markets and technologies for heating systems and so on should change. Cooperation and coordination between policymakers, and I would add lawmakers, because most of us are sitting in parliaments, international financial institutions, also multilateral institutions, the private sector and the civil society will be essential. This is also why we're talking about circular economy, isn't it? While many countries have already submitted updated national determined contributions, NDCs, and strategic plans to reach carbon neutrality within the next decades, COP26 will be the occasion to turn promises into actions. Today, I'm hereby inviting all PAM Parliaments to raise their climate ambitions and increase their determination as they oversee the deliverables of governments. Ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you all, the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions are climate change hotspots. In our countries, we see rising air and sea temperatures more than any other places around the earth. We suffer from a rapid loss of biodiversity and a threatening rate of environmental degradation. Our region already witnessed the rise of temperatures well above 2 degrees Celsius, so more than the 1.5 degrees that we're setting up as target. We cannot afford the dramatic consequences that political immobilism will have on our waters, lands, and on our health. For the sake of our rich natural and cultural heritage, and for the well-being of our future generations, we cannot allow for further damages. Dear colleagues, it is our duty as parliamentarians to set higher targets, higher expectations, and provide the correct legislative frameworks required for a systemic change in our development models. We have to be brave. In December, the contracting parties to the Barcelona Convention for the Protection of the Marine Environment in the Mediterranean will gather for the COP22 in Antalya in the state of Turkey. Along with our partners at the UN Environment Programme, Mediterranean Action Plan, UNEP, MEP, PAM has been working incessantly to protect the Mediterranean Sea, its coasts, and its communities. As Honorable Alain Perea, the PAM rapporteur for the environment, greatly illustrated during the last PAM plenary session in June, the burden placed by anthropogenic climate change on our sea needs to be immediately reversed. If this does not happen in the near future, living close to our coastal areas may not be possible anymore. A recent report by the WWF made this point clear enough. 1,000 new invasive species have entered the Mediterranean Sea through the Suez Canal in recent years. At the same time, native species populations have dropped up to an astonishing 40% in some areas of our basin. The Mare Nostrum also suffers from another alarming invasion, marine litter. And there's a nice picture also quoted in a book that I recently read of a seahorse kissing a cotton fioc, something that you use to clean your ears. It's really alarming. And tourism, as a recent research by the University of Barcelona reported, is responsible for 80% of this pollution in Mediterranean islands. I believe we should all join our forces to modify our national consumption and production behaviors, our social behaviors, of course, and to restructure tourism in our region for a post-pandemic revival of the sector that can be resilient, forward-looking, but especially looking for the health and safety of the future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to catch the opportunities that recovery plans offer to our countries, either if they are domestic or, like in the case of my country, they are proposed by multinational entities like the European Union. We need to rethink our economies through a sustainable development lens, and the tourism industry has the potential to become the engine of green renaissance in our region. And who's talking, myself, comes from a country where 14% of the GDP is produced by tourism, so quite a large share. Climate action and the transformation of our production system must go hands in hands. This is why the Assembly has been long advocating for the application of taxation for environment and the creation of a regional coalition for climate neutrality. And this is why PAM is persuaded that channeling recovery strategies towards a green transition will translate into the long-term resilience of our societies. As so, today's interventions and the following discussion will focus on 4 policy areas. First, the energy transition in the region. Second, nature-based solutions for biodiversity and natural resource protection. Third, green businesses and sustainable tourism. Fourth, urbanization and sustainable coastal management. The panel of experts that will address this session comes from diverse and complementary backgrounds in science, policy, and diplomacy. Different perspectives for a common challenge, preserving our region and protecting the people who live in it. I am positive that their insights and recommendations will provide all of us with the tools of enhanced cohesive legislative climate actions. and truly push our governments to place the most pressing environmental needs of PAM countries at the forefront of climate negotiation. Now, I would like to introduce our first guest, and I'm very honored to open the section of our meeting dedicated to the Roundtable Expert Consultation. Our first guest is Dr. Mithya Brisheli, President of the Mediterranean Commission for Sustainable Development. And as you may know, PAM has confirmed its role as a representative of the parliamentary dimension within the Commission. Indeed, we are pleased and honored to collaborate with Dr. Brisheli and his great team to further push climate action within our beloved region. Dr. Brisheli specializes in applied hydrogeography with a focus on water governance and coastal and sea management. He served as State Secretary of the Slovenian Ministry of the Environment, and he is internationally renowned for macro-regional strategies on coastal management. Dr. Brisheli, let me ask you, what are the main priorities and recommendations of the MCSD for the Mediterranean COP22? And what can PAM countries do in practice to control marine pollution and conserving sea and coastal ecosystem? Please, Mr. Brisheli, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Your Excellencies, dear parliamentarians. I'm really delighted to share with you our last, let's say, conclusions of the Mediterranean Commission for Sustainable Development of 19th session from June this year, where I'm really proud to present it in a very short way, but I believe clear to address this very important topic to contribute to the climate change ambition program for to address this important issue for our let's say our children, and we are those who should and must act. With this, I'm starting my presentation, and I kindly ask the technicians to open it. It's not long; it's 6 slides, but I believe quite condensed, and we can of course see our contribution to this issue via our conclusion of our commission. I hope it will work. In due time, I can also somehow remind all of us of the role of the Mediterranean Action Plan and Barcelona Convention as legal framework to really coordinate the national actions for the shared coastal and marine environment, of course, to enhance the quality of life along the shared sea. But unfortunately, the last results of the report of the state of the environment and development in the Mediterranean prepared by the Blue Plan and the first assessment report on climate and environmental change in the Mediterranean basin is not very much encouraging. Contrary, the network of Mediterranean experts on climate and environmental change, they presented to us quite bitter picture with this, that the message is very clear. Mediterranean region is not on track to achieve the SDGs by 2030. So the Mediterranean region is not going in the right direction to implement sustainable development goals. This is important message, and urgent action must be taken to halt current trajectories of environmental degradation. This is clear, and it's very clear reported, and scientific results showing those trends extremely clear on, I would say, brutal results. A bold transformation is needed to re-engineering our relationship with the natural resources of our basin. This is, let's say, one of important messages and recommendation from our Commission for Sustainable Development. And green paths must be prioritized and select, and all sectors, including renewable energy, integrated water resource management, sustainable agriculture, fisheries, of course, alternative tourism and low emission shipping are some of them, but there are more. And all these sectors must change their approach to development in the region. They have to recognize that environment is limited, and the environment is also, of course, about the people, about the human health, and about, of course, quality of life. Failure to implement pro-sustainability policies will leave the region unprepared to confront future climate and environmental challenges, leaving millions of people exposed to the consequences. We definitely, this must not be the future for our children, and we are here to act. This is the trends are very clear, and my let's say chairman already mentioned the rising of the temperature, and all consequences in the Mediterranean are much faster than in any other region. With this, conversely, taking results, steps in the right direction, we can bring and talk about the green renaissance in the Mediterranean. The knowledge is here. And with this, you as parliamentarians, your contribution to promoting smart investments today in a sustainable and resilient tomorrow are vital. This is definitely the vital action to change the trends on the decision level, on the top level, and of course to act from top down. This is needed more than ever to demonstrate the action. With this, we believe that by aligning national policies with the Agenda 2030 and the Paris Agreement, the Mediterranean countries can become the champions of the green renaissance. The knowledge is behind, the excellent, I would say, structure of the Secretariat of the Barcelona Convention with the regional centers, what is the asset of our, let's say, institution, international, regional institution. We do have the network, which is almost 50 years working for, let's say, solutions. And this is asset with, here are some slides, which it's extremely, let's say, represent the extremely valuable results to assist the countries, taking into account the knowledge, of course, the expert knowledge for sustainable solutions. And this is something what we would like, again, to somehow promote its integrated approach, which brings, and it's at home in Mediterranean, for example, integrated coastal zone management, taking into account in the same time addressing the land-based sources of pollution and land, and from the other, the sea, coast and coastal region as, let's say, buffer where both sides, land and sea side, are coming together, and where is the very fragile environment, and where are, on the other hand, very, very intensive economic activities are going on. Or vice versa, this buffer among the land and sea can be destroyed, can be somehow degraded. And this is something what definitely we do not want. This is the cradle of our civilization. This is the cradle of economy. This is the cradle of culture. And this is something what we are responsible for. With this, I would like to plea to you just with the key achievements what we already achieved in this, our Mediterranean Commission for Sustainable Development, taking into account the Barcelona Convention process. And this is something what we should really use and build on, including today's discussion, and to contribute to change, if I may ask for the next slide, our approach and demonstrate the change to this green, let's say, shift and click to green dimension of development, the green switch, which will lead us to sustainable development goals, to really to implement it in the Mediterranean. This is, let's say, low-hanging fruit if we act together. If we act, as my chairman said, with ambition, with, of course, I would add also with our responsibility, and to demonstrate it. Now it's the time to act. Tomorrow will be too late, and now is the proper time. And I'm really looking forward for the COP in December, where we do have good signals. Slovenia is also the presidency of the European Union to bring all knowledge and your, let's say, contribution to demonstrate this change in preparing appropriate programs with the very clear agenda for the implementation in next biennium, which, and in mid-term strategy, we believe will be the green switch. And I'm really asking you as very important, the most important stakeholders, the Parliament members, that of course we believe in your responsibility with the partnership together with us for our children, for the new generation. And I know that you, as a member of parliamentarians, PAM, as a member of the Mediterranean Commission for Sustainable Development, and from this June also the member of the steering group of Mediterranean Commission for Sustainable Development, that you will steer this, our boat, together with us in right direction with very concrete contribution. And I would like to thank you all for this important consultation today. And we are looking forward to go along to the COP in December with your contribution as much as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brisheli. It was very interesting, especially because you showed us that there are low-hanging fruits. So the green switch or the blue switch can be turned easily, but we have to speak with one voice. So going forward on our panel, I'd like to introduce Dr. Petery Talas, Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization, Professor Talas holds a PhD in meteorology from the University of Helsinki, Finland. And before joining the WMO, he was Director General of the Finnish Meteorological Institute. He has been chairman of the European National Meteorological Services Network and of the European Meteorological Satellite Organization. He was principal delegate of Finland to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, from 2007 to 2015. And he is the author of more than 50 peer-reviewed papers on climate change and atmospheric chemistry. Today, Professor Talas is going to walk us through the path of the climate risks the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions are currently working on. It will also provide us with some concrete and actual policy guidelines to mitigate and prevent such threats. Professor Talas, it is a great pleasure to have you with us, and please, the floor is yours.
Thanks for the invitation to address you, colleagues, and greetings from Geneva. And I'm here by the Lake Geneva, which is, by the way, former Bay of Mediterranean. So I have the flavor of Mediterranean here if I look thousands of years backwards. I would like to show you some slides, what we know about the status of climate and how it's affecting, especially Mediterranean region. Could I get my slides up, please? Next, please. So WMO is a UN specialized agency on weather, climate, and water, and all of the UN members are also our members, and we are very much working through our national experts. We have more than 300,000 experts who are dealing with meteorological and hydrological services, related science, academia, and nowadays also private sector. And we have been setting out the global observing systems for weather, climate, water, and oceans, and we have been coordinating that. We are the host organization of IPCC, which is soon going to publish their main reports in August, the physical basis and so forth. And in UN, we are very much working towards this COP26 meeting, and I'm one of the core group members of Secretary General Guterres, who is personally very committed to promote climate mitigation and also climate adaptation. Next, please. Could you make it a little bit smaller, please, so that we can see the whole slide? Thanks. So for us, it's important that we have the basic observation systems. We are exchanging them in real time, and then we run forecasting models, and then we can issue the forecasts and deliver these services to various users, and users have to understand the things. And in our case, half of our members have proper systems, especially the developed country ones, but most of our less developed country members, especially in Africa, Pacific, and Caribbean islands, they have major difficulties there. Next, please. And our business is also economically viable. We have counted that the benefits of our business, they are of the order of $160 billion yearly, and you can see that they are related to disaster risk reduction, agriculture, energy, transportation, water supply, and constructions. And there are many sectors which are benefiting from our expertise. Next, please. And one of our challenges is at the moment is that some of our member countries don't have proper early warning services because they have major gaps in the observing systems. And all these red areas here in the upper panel indicate the countries where we don't have proper ground-based observations, and that's a major obstacle for accuracy of early warning services and finally climate adaptation. Next, please. So we are producing on an annual basis status of climate reports, and I will show you results from our recent report, which was published in March. Last decade was the warmest decade since 1850, and in Europe and in Asia, we were measuring the highest temperatures ever. And in Southern Hemisphere, we had the cooling effect of La Nina, and that's why the whole planet wasn't the warmest ever. It's likely that this year may be the warmest year on record. And we have been measuring year by year record concentrations of main greenhouse gases, and especially most important one, which is carbon dioxide, which has contributed 2/3 of the warming so far. And despite of these COVID lockdowns last year, the carbon dioxide concentrations have been still growing. Next, please. And this is the carbon budget. What happens to carbon dioxide? These upper numbers, the positive numbers, indicate sources of carbon, and 85% of the carbon that we have in the atmosphere, they are based on coal, oil, and natural gas, and 15% of the problem is related to land use change, and there especially tropical rainforests in Latin America, Africa, and Southern Asia are the problem. And then oceans and lands serve as a sink of carbon, and the rest remains in the atmosphere. And as I was just demonstrating, we have seen growing amount of carbon dioxide remaining in the atmosphere. Next, please. And we have stored more than 90% of the excess heat that we have produced to the planet to oceans, and this deep seawater mass has started warming, and it's happening year by year. And this is contributing to sea level rise, and it's also contributing to many ecological problems like dying of coral reefs and so forth. And this sea level rise has been accelerating during the recent years, and the melting of Greenland glacier and Antarctic glacier, they have been one of the factors behind this boost. And then we have also started changing the chemical composition of the seawater, since oceans serve as a sink of carbon dioxide, and that's why the seawater has been getting more acid, and this is also a challenge for the ecological balance of the seas. Next, please. And sea level rise estimates are now higher than they used to be, for example, in the last IPCC report. Now the conservative estimates are about 0.5 meter to 1 meter per century, and this rise will continue until the end of next century. And in the worst case, we could see even 5 meters sea level rise by 2300, and in the best case, about 2 meters sea level rise. Next, please. We have seen changes in the global precipitation patterns. This is an estimation comparison between last decades and early decades of last century. And you can see that, for example, Africa, Southern Asia, Middle East area, and whole Mediterranean region has been getting already drier, and same is true for the Amazonian region. Next, please. And we have seen growing amount of natural flooding has been the main problem worldwide, with 2 billion inhabitants of the planet exposed to major flooding event during the past 20 years, and about 1.5 billion people have been exposed to major drought problem, and both of them are observed in your region. Next, please. And if you look at the Mediterranean region, flooding has been the most common disaster. Secondly, we have seen storms, and but if you look at the damages, then it's flooding, extreme temperature, and drought, which are the dominant ones. And in total affected, we can say that drought has been the major problem in your sub-region. Next, please. And then we have also seen changes in the cryosphere, both the snow cover and ice cover worldwide, they are melting. And we have seen a boost in the melting of mountain glaciers, and that's bad news when it comes to availability of water in the main rivers, worldwide. And that's also the case in Europe, where we have plenty of rivers which have their origins from the alpine glaciers. Next, please. And IMF has estimated what the current warming, which is now 1.2 degrees, what kind of economic impact it has had, and all these red colors indicate negative impact, and this is very much coming from changes in the precipitation patterns and more evaporation, and especially the southern and eastern part of Mediterranean are reddish, and the high northern latitudes have gained from the higher temperatures and more precipitation. Next, please. And we have created a consortium of UN partners who are going to give a boost to the hydrological observing systems services and also climate adaptation, and we will launch this water climate coalition accelerator during the COP26 in November this year. Next, please. And this is what the IPCC published 2.5 years ago concerning 1.5 versus 2 degrees warming, where they were demonstrating clearly that 1.5 would be the best for the welfare of mankind and our planet, and there we should turn this emission growth curve in the coming 5 years and be carbon neutral by 2050. And now we have luckily plenty of countries who have at least politically indicated that they would like to aim at this 1.5 degree instead of going to higher temperatures. Next, please. And this is from the IPCC report that will be published in August, in 3 weeks from now, and they have estimated, for example, how the soil moisture will evolve during the coming decades. And in the lower panel, you can see the soil moisture graphs for 1.5 degree warming, 2 degree warming, and 4 degree warming. And in all cases, Mediterranean region is brownish. So anyhow, the soil will get drier, and that's bad news when it comes to agriculture, and also the temperatures are going to be higher, much more than the global average, and that's bad news also for tourism, I would say. Next, please. And one of the challenges that we are facing, especially in Africa and some parts of Asian countries, is that we will get difficulties with the water availability, and at the same time the population is growing, and we should also pay attention to population growth. Next, please. And this is just to summarize what is the challenge. So we have to get rid of the fossil carbon, which is causing 85% of the problem, and also we should pay attention to land use change, which is 15% of the problem. Next, please. And this is the main challenge, that at the moment 85% of the energy that we use for energy production, industry, transport and housing is based on coal, oil and gas, and only 15% is based on nuclear, hydro and renewables. And to be successful with the climate mitigation, we should revert those numbers during the coming decades. Next, please. And this is the vision of European Union, how to become carbon neutral by 2050. And here you can see also the magnitudes of various sectors which are contributing to the emissions. Number 1 is power production, number 2 transport, number 3 industry, and then housing and so forth, and agriculture are the next ones. And the main idea is to reduce the emissions by 90% and take care of that by using carbon sinks and also remove a bit carbon from the atmosphere. And my final slide, please. So these are the security policy and political dimensions of this challenge. Agriculture is for sure going to suffer because of climate change, as I was already demonstrating, and Mediterranean region is one of those areas. And it's clearly shown that the mitigation is much cheaper than living with the consequences of climate change. So it's even 20-fold difference in that case. And this oil and gas dependent economies it's not an easy case, but we have heard that both Russia and Saudi Arabia, for example, have at least politically indicated they would like to become carbon neutral by 2050. But this is not an easy conversion for such countries. And in Africa, this population growth makes the case more challenging, and in many countries they are already having challenges with the current amount of population, and that for sure we will see more pressure related to immigration, and in Europe the southern part is the most risky when it comes to impacts of climate change. With these words, thanks for the opportunity to address you, and I would like to wish you most successful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Talas. We for sure have more clear what it means to be a climate change hotspot for the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions. And thank you for giving us some ideas of practical measures that need to be implemented in order to get back on track, especially for our kind of development. And I'd like to add that it's not just more convenient to mitigate the climate change for social and environmental region, but it transforms also carbon neutrality, transforms economies to be more sustainable as well under an economic point of view. If you look at countries like Lebanon right now that needs to import oil and gas to produce electricity, while they could produce electricity through solar panel or Aeolian means, you see that it's a kind of financial slavery for importation. So I think it will be good for many deficit countries to go towards carbon neutrality. Then thank you again, and going forward to our next guest, who's Dr. Luca Brusa, Senior Officer of the Mitigation Division of the UNFCCC, 3x C. Dr. Brusa has an ample experience in developing regional activities supporting climate action. He currently leads the stakeholder and regional support team at the UNFCCC after years of projects and research activities within UNFCCC and prominent research centers in international organizations. Dr. Brusa is going to elaborate on the adaptation and mitigation strategies we will need to adopt to preserve the well-being of our communities in the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf countries. Dr. Brusa, thank you very much for being with us today, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me well.
Loud and clear, Dr. Brusa. Loud and clear.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you to Ambassador Piazzi, Excellencies, distinguished guests and colleagues. Thank you, because this is a very crucial time on what we can call the road to COP26, which is really around the corner. As you know, it will start on the 1st of November 2021 in Glasgow, in the UK. And before that, there will be the pre-COP, actually will be held in Italy, so in the Mediterranean region, in Milan at the end of September, beginning of October for a few days. So the two, which in the end are 3 weeks of the COP, because of course there are activities just before the COP starts, are crucial in 2021, because as you know, we lost some time due to the COVID, but it doesn't mean that despite the global pandemic, the climate emergency continues to worsen. Parties, like those represented today in this meeting, have a substantial amount of standing work to complete. The Paris Agreement is not implemented, the NDC, and I will go into more detail about the NDC. Sorry about the acronym, but actually this was also explained before, the national determined contributions are inadequate at the moment. So what's needed, the nation have not shown the climate ambition needed to drive the deep and rapid change required to avoid and adapt to the worst impacts of climate change. So despite some recent momentum, we had good stories recently in June. We had in Bonn, well, they were virtually, the sessions. And so we call the subsidiary session in preparation for the COP. And seems there is a renovated interest. A significant amount of work remains. Some was actually mentioned by the previous speaker. So COP26 is crucial to get back on track. But we have to say that we strongly believe that this moment is also an opportunity as nation builds forwards from the COVID-19 pandemic to structure, resilient, sustainable, green post-recovery economies. Green recovery is really the key word right now. It's a rare moment that cannot be lost. Recovery investments need to consider the carbon footprint of activities. There will be financing. I think if some of you mentioned climate finance, I will come back on that as well. Bottom line, we must align the recovery with the Paris Agreement. And this is what we need to achieve as a key result at COP26. So COP26 is an opportunity for nations to make progress addressing climate change, detailing how they will be forward better. Its success is imperative for establishing trust and leadership. And I will focus on leadership because I'm talking to leaders today, which who have a very important role in the climate change process. So to achieve a net zero emission by 2050, and this is a very important date I would like to stress during my intervention, we must take steps this year, 2021. I know we are already towards the middle of it, moving towards the end of it, but there is time and we need to take every second, really every minute count. But also COP will be an opportunity to renew confidence and credibility in multilateralism. As you know, the Paris Agreement suffered the fact that not everyone stayed in it, and then they left it, and now they're coming back, like in the case of the United States. So the possibility to have a COP after the United States are back into it is definitely a very important moment and very important sign of credibility of multilateralism. The benefits of this cannot be understated. The success in the climate change arena could, by provide tangible evidence and value of global collaboration, trigger progress on a variety of topics, including the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals, which again were mentioned by some of you and by previous speakers. We need a balanced package of decisions at the COP, an action reflecting expectation, concern, and needs of all stakeholders in multiple areas, all set against this very key word, which was mentioned several times by our Secretary General, Mr. Guterres, which is the word of ambition. If you remember, in a couple of COPs before, he said, repeated 5 times the word ambition, ambition, ambition. That was the moment before the NDC were supposed to be prepared and revamped. And then, of course, the COVID came. But somebody mentioned before the word the legislation. So governments need to agree on the rules to implement the Paris Agreement. We've been negotiating on these rules for 5 years, because once these rules are clear and implemented, of course, they will need to become policies at your level. So parties now must finish the work at hand. We are hearing more and more about climate neutrality, net zero emission, and 2050, as I mentioned before. Of course, all of this work is important, but it's hard to hear more talk about the future when the work of today is not completed. And we are not even close. For example, many pre-2020 commitments, the so-called, that were supposed to be captured in more ambitious NDC, have yet to be met. A commitment by developing countries to developing nations that they will be mobilizing 100 billion annually, and that was in the Paris Agreement, is after all this time still not fulfilled, not even close. Reach this. So in introductory remarks, the level of ambition it was really is really very low in the synthesis report of the first round. Now we are working on the second round, so the deadline is the 31st of July. So as I said, there are very few countries in part of this organization that are submitted. So I do invite governments here represented to remind them that the deadline is 31st of July. Otherwise, I mean, you can, of course, submit afterwards, that's no problem. And it's always welcome, obviously. Ambition and disease are always welcome. But we have a deadline for the synthesis report because that will be presented at the COP. So most probably we'll do an addendum. There is some work on that. We will talk at the bureau level to resolve that. It was also mentioned that at the COP26, we will need to take a decision on what we call Article 6, which is still not been agreed. And during the June session, this was also, again, one hot topic, if you want to say. Article 6, for those who don't know, is the article that focuses on market mechanism, the exchange of transactions of climate, of certified emissions, or whatever. They will have a different name than the previous in the Kyoto Protocol, but that still has not been agreed. We can imagine how many private business are really asking for this to be approved, to be agreed upon. So what our Executive Secretary, Ms. Patricia Spinoza, and all our colleagues are really focused on in the remaining month, together with the COP presidency 25, which was Chile, COP presidency incoming COP presidency 26, which will be the United Kingdom, with the support of Italy as a joint presidency, are four crucial elements. Promises, number one, promises made must be promises kept. Indeed, a lot was promised during Paris, and still, as I said before, we are a bit far away. The second element we need to achieve is wrap up outstanding negotiations, and I already just mentioned, for example, the typical example of Article 6, but there are other topics, in particular in the area of climate finance, need to be finalized. Point number three, raise ambition in mitigation, adaptation, and finance. The best time to raise climate ambition was yesterday. The next best time is today, because never has global expectation and political commitment been so far apart. It's really, we hear a lot, as UNSCC, a lot of very good speech, but there is a gap between what are the expectation and the political commitment. And yet, this has not been filled, this gap. Of course, I want also to say, because of course I mentioned Article 6, we are talking about mitigation, but of course ambition, especially also, and it was very good, some of the graphs shown before, indeed the adaptation resilience in the region, if you focus on the Mediterranean region, was very clear that there are major issues in terms of adaptation resilience as well, in particular in the southern part. And then there is the element of finance. That is also, there is not enough finance moving from developed country towards developing country. And then the last point, point number four, that indeed was very important in the Paris Agreement. I was very much involved in those negotiations. that's also my role, to involve all possible stakeholders into the process, was that we shouldn't leave no voice or solution behind. We must re-engage, like we did for Paris, with observer and non-party stakeholders in a unity of purpose. Our brand of inclusive multilateralism is the only way forward. And I repeat, definitely that was an important element that played positively in the approval of the Paris Agreement back in 2015. We all remember, for example, the involvement of the civil society, of the NGOs, which were very, very vocal before Paris and have been also soon after. But now we need to build on that relationship, not only therefore with the parties, with the nation, but also with those groups in your constituencies, like the business, the private sector, and the civil society. I mentioned leadership before, and I'm happy to talk today to leadership, because you are the leadership in your country. And we need you to send the signal that climate change remains a priority in the international agenda, and it is at the center of recovery effort. Yes, the G20 mentioned that this is a key priority, but we need to hear also from all of you. There was the announcement yesterday. There were more announcements done in the last few weeks. The European Union recently adopted its Green Deal, which was followed by revised NDC submission, where the EU pledged a 55% reduction in greenhouse gas emission by 2030, compared with 1990 levels. The EU has also committed to carbon neutrality by 2050. The United Kingdom, that, as I repeated before, will be co-hosting with Italy the COP presidency in Glasgow in November, recently announced a new emission target, setting the UK on a path also to net zero emission by 2050. As I mentioned before, the United Nations are now back in the Paris Agreement, and they played an important key role in previous negotiations, including in Paris, and also they submitted a much more ambitious and revised NDC. So we're really looking forward to work with them again. This is the leadership we need to see at the governmental level. We encourage other nations like yours to get on board, publicly announcing their intention and commit to the transformation we must achieve. As I mentioned before, leadership extends to the business and investor sectors. It's important and crucial that you involve them in your work. For example, in the development of the NDC. We also encourage the transformation on this front as outlined in the Race to Zero campaign, which was launched again by the UK presidency recently. So, just to conclude, because I don't want to take too much of your time, I would like to conclude with a statement that our Executive Secretary, Ms. Patricia Spinoza, gave the other day, actually, after I spoke to her, that was coming to talk to you. And her priority in these remaining months is indeed to support events like this one. So again, I would like to say on her behalf, thank you to give us the opportunity to be here today as the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat, to strengthen once again our message of multilateralism, of ambition. And I want also to add, we are not just here, as you know, we are based in Bonn, far away. We are ready to work with you. We are open regional centers all over the globe, including in your region. Well, is in Dubai, covering, however, your region, but we have also a center in West Africa, a center in East Africa for others that are able to support you. Maybe I will leave the information with the organizer of this event, because these centers are launching several projects in the region, coordinating, in particular, capacity building, development, raising awareness on topics related to COP26. They are happy to travel to your countries, and they did in some of the countries represented today. They were in Lebanon, they were in Syria, they were in Libya, and so on, to talk about these topics. In Algeria, actually, was a couple of weeks ago. So we are very happy to come back and bring any message, any awareness that is needed for preparing your negotiators towards COP26 and your public opinion. As I said, Patricia Spinoza left a small quote to you, and she said that 2021 must be the year we collectively show, through concrete action, that we are truly committed to build a healthier, more sustainable, safer, and resilient future for all people. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you, Mr. Brusa. It was very, very, very interesting. Especially, I underline that participation of private sector is important, and as of yesterday, a group of insurance companies launched the Net Zero Insurance Alliance, among other kind of businesses. So it is really key for change, and we cannot envisage the PAM region without thinking that climate change is there to stay, is here to stay, and we have definitely to take actions. Now I have the pleasure to introduce our next guest, Miss Maria Carmela Giarratano, Head of the Department of Personnel, Nature, Territory, and the Mediterranean at the Italian Ministry for Ecological Transition under Minister Cingolani. Ms. Giarratano has an outstanding career as a civil servant, operating both at the local and national level within environmental protection, marine and natural conservation, energy policies, and public health. Ms. Giarratano will show the excellent work her ministry is conducting at the national and international levels to channel the resources of recovery plans towards structural changes for a green and resilient future. Ms. Giarratano, it's a pleasure to having you with us today. Please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Your Excellency, distinguished delegates. It's my pleasure to participate in this meeting representing the Ministry of Ecological Transition. Minister Cingolani asked me to give you his regards and to show you the vision of the Ministry on the main issues about biodiversity and contrasting marine pollution. First, let me thank you for this working session, recalling the fruitful and strong collaboration among the Mediterranean countries. Italy strongly believes that preventing and mitigating climate change and halting the loss of biodiversity should become priority issues on the agenda of every country and in the framework of the G20. We worked to increase the level of ambition in the relevant institutional fora in a year, representing a key timeline for the global environmental agenda that Italy decided to push forward also within its G20 presidency. Protecting biodiversity and ecosystem, promoting ecosystem-based approaches, fostering capacity building through a new horizon of cooperation, the support of the international organization expertise and the scientific institution represent, therefore, key priorities, not only for 2021, but for the years ahead. In this scenario, our first commitment goes to Mediterranean, our common home in which our communities have lived and worked for millennia and was health is of undisputed relevance for perspective of well-being and peace for our children depend. In recent years, the nature-based solution, an umbrella concept introduced specifically to promote nature as a means for providing a solution to climate mitigation and adaptation challenges, can provide a large part of this integrated response. If properly implemented, nature-based solution can generate a series of environmental co-benefits, such as buffer strips and depuration systems, adaptation intervention to protect coastal areas threatened by rising sea levels, restoration of dunes and wetlands, urban reforestation, and sustainable forestry intervention. In this scenario, and we view to adopt an ambitious, realistic, and sound post-2020 global biodiversity framework, we also need a renewed green finance agenda indicated toward the solution capable to represent the specific financing needs for the protection and the restoration of ecosystems as a contribution to the G20 work on the future shape of the global financial system. More in general, every country through domestic policy reform need to develop and implement biodiversity finance plans to create the right regulatory framework for incentives and the creation of sustainable measures. Regarding the marine ecosystem, in order to maintain the marine environmental natural function and to preserve the enormous well of biodiversity that Mediterranean possesses, Italy can share the decades of commitment of both nationally and internationally. As you know, the most important environmental protection policies in the regional field are implemented under the Barcelona Convention for the protection of the Mediterranean Sea against pollution. In this context, among the main actions carried out by Italy, we can recall development of projects within the Coastal Area Management Program, aimed at the implementation of coastal management projects developed in pilot areas located in the Mediterranean, where integrated coastal zone management is the main tool for achieving a sustainable development. The Italian commitments in promotion of investment dedicated to technological innovation, use for engineers without climate altering emission, and the decarbonization of the maritime transport and the port sector have also translated in the support of the designation of the Mediterranean as a sulfur emission control area in order to reduce the impact of ship emissions on the marine environment and the human health. The maritime transports and the port sector indeed, as recently noted by the International Maritime Organization, recorded an increase in GHG emission in the period 2012 and 2018 equal to 9.6%. In order to stop the increase in climate changing emission, work is being done at an international level to implement a roadmap that would lead to a 70% reduction in emissions caused by this sector by 2050. The Ministry of Ecological Transition has then started a dialogue with the stakeholders in order to identify target and sustainable solution that all the achievement of the climate neutrality objectives investigated both in the EU and globally. Moreover, for this purpose, a measure has been included in the Italian Recovery and Resilience Plan that intervenes on the ecological footprint of Italian ports and aimed at increasing the energy efficiency of the structures and reducing climate altering gases. Finally, the protection of marine biodiversity and the health of our seas cannot ignore their application of the main international and EU strategies, such as the implementation of Marine Strategy Framework Directive and in the Mediterranean field of the Ecosystem Approach Program, which both aims at the achieving of the good environmental status of the marine waters. In this context, a great effort was made in particular to increase the knowledge related to the impacts caused by humans, also with reference to the cumulative effects caused by anthropogenic activities and climate change, in order to fill the knowledge gaps and to foresee concrete action for the protection of the sea. The Italian Recovery and Resilience Plan envisage one specific project focused on the marine ecosystem restoration. Now, well, we have the duty to build a new relationship among economy, territory and environment, and it is a duty we all must undertake together, ensuring a strong dialogue with any institutional actor and stakeholders. Responses to the pandemic offer a unique opportunity for transformative change as a global community. An investment in the health of our planet is an investment in our future. I thank you all for your attention and wish you all buon lavoro.
Thank you, Miss Giarratano. It was very interesting also to analyze a domestic perspective that I know quite well, but to share with our guests, it was really interesting. I recall that in Rome, where you are right now, I'm in Milan. I'm coming from tonight. There's another government, the Vatican government, and it's interesting to see that also the head of that government, the Pope, in his second circular letter, talked a lot about environment and a green perspective. So the two governments are kind of working together. Okay, thank you so much for being with us. We'll introduce our next guest. His name is Enrique de Villamore, Director of the Regional Activity Center for Sustainable Consumption and Production, SCPRAC, of the United Nations Development Program, Mediterranean Action Plan, UNEP, MEP. Mr. de Villamore actively contributed to the progressive integration of sustainable consumption on production, green entrepreneurship, and the empowerment of civil society as main drivers for sustainable development within the framework of UNEP MAP. Mr. de Villamore, how can blue and green business strategies aid in the context of a post-COVID-19 recovery? What can be done to foster sustainability and sustainable production and consumption models at different levels of the economies within the PAM region? What do you see in the future of the relations among local national and regional sustainable development. Please, Mr. De Villamor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Julio. Thank you very much to PAM for having invited us to this important consultation. It is a pleasure and an honor for us, for me, to join you. As you were well mentioning, I'm representing SCP-RAC, one of the components under the Mediterranean Action Plan. As you were mentioning at the beginning of the event, this year, by the end of this year, in December, the next Conference of the Parties of the Barcelona Convention will be taking place in Antalya. And in that sense, we are very aware of the important role that your institution will be playing in all the negotiations of the countries. In that sense, including one decision that addresses specifically the need of supporting entrepreneurs and businesses for circular and green economies in our region. In that sense, I wanted to mention something that probably is evident for everybody, but sometimes it's good to remind, which is that, as you know, both entrepreneurs and businesses are drivers of our economies, and therefore, depending on the type of entrepreneurs and businesses, government support will be finally coming with more brown or green and more exclusive, let's say, exclusively social socially inclusive economies in our region. So this is why it's so important to support the type of businesses that are really contributing to our region to become more green and more sustainable. In that sense, the Barcelona Convention is very aware of this need in order to move forward sustainable development and for the protection of the environment. And this is why for years they have entrusted UNEP and specifically SCP-RAC to develop a series of actions in support to the flourishing of green entrepreneurship and green business in our region. In that sense, maybe I would like to ask to the colleague, the technical colleague, to switch on the presentation. Thank you very much. You can move to the next slide. In that sense, the center has been able to develop a series of different actions and activities in the past years under the so-called Switchers program. This is, let's say, this is the program under which we have developed all these actions. And the name Switchers, let's say, comes from the idea of people really making the switch and trying to make a change. In that sense, as you can see in the slide, so far we have been able to come with quite relevant, let's say, impacts of the program. So as you can see in the slide, we have been able to support the development of sustainable business models in 10 countries, and we're talking about more than 2,500 people supported, out of which 40% were women, which is of course very important, especially in a region in which we know that unfortunately many times let's say the role of women are not very seen in this type of, let's say, sector, entrepreneurship and businesses. So for us, it was very important to try to address the actions in a way that women were well integrated. Also, under the development of this program, we developed a specific community of green entrepreneurs that so far has come with about 400 members. This is absolutely crucial for us if we really want to support, let's say, the flourishing of a market of green and sustainable products in our region. And in that sense, to ensure the collaboration and the partnership between entrepreneurs and businesses from different countries of our region. Also, some important figure from the program has been the possibility of training as well trainers in the countries. We're talking about the training of more than 300 specialized trainers on circular businesses. And also the national level, we are working very intensively in the idea of establishing what we call national partnerships for a circular and green economy. So far, we are establishing national partnerships in 7 countries of our region, and in which so far there are about 100 business support organizations joining these national partnerships. Well, all these type of, let's say, activities and the corresponding, let's say, impacts have been able because of a work of many years. And just recently, we have been able to let's say, centralize all the different methodologies and services that we provide in support to these entrepreneurs and these businesses in just one online platform. This online platform is known as the switchers.org platform, in which what we try to do is to let's say, facilitate all the let's say the networking between entrepreneurs and companies through this platform. And also the platform is very useful for us to be able to, let's say, provide our services to these entrepreneurs in a much more, let's say, fast way. Also, maybe a last figure I wanted to mention that I think is relevant is that through the program, we have been able to mobilize about 2.5 million euros in support to entrepreneurs, so direct, let's say, funding to entrepreneurs. Next slide, please. As I was mentioning, now all these services are found in this specific platform, the Switchers platform, in which there are different, let's say, spaces where entrepreneurs and different stakeholders, entrepreneur businesses, possible donors, financial institutions, and also, of course, policymakers and representatives from countries can find all the different, let's say, services and information of the respective interests. So in the platform contains both the toolbox of different methodologies we have developed through the years. Also, the platform includes what we call the Switchers Fund that we created a few years ago, and we are working in consolidating its structure. The platform as well includes the community, and last but not least, also Policy Hub. So in order to promote the, let's say, the peer learning among different countries on different policy and regulatory instruments that have been developed by the different countries of our region. So next slide, please. Thank you very much. Well, as just was mentioning, currently the switchers.org is centralizing all these type of services we provide. And something important to mention is that this platform belongs to the program we have developed for many years, and that for years has been funded by main, let's say, donors like the DG NEAR from the European Commission, also thanks to Mediterranean Plans funds from UNMAP, and also from countries like Spain. So far, we think that more than, not maybe this figure of 1,700 registered users is a little bit outdated. Now we are going through to the 1,900, and so we're approaching the 2,000 people registered in this platform. And this is a very good news for us, because in that sense, it was just 4 months ago that we launched it. So next slide, please. However, all this work that has been done through UNMAP and also through SCP-RAC to support entrepreneurs has been done on the basis of the request from the countries to develop a certain different type of activities in direct support to this kind of targets. But despite the let's say the meaningful results so far, it has been identified a lack of a specific, let's say, policy backup to a certain number of let's say concrete measures to support this type of entrepreneurs and businesses as well. So this is why in the last conference of the parties that took place in Naples in 2019, countries agreed on the need for a framework of regional measures to promote the support and development of businesses for circular and green economies, and also for the promotion of the consumption of sustainable products. And in that sense, the countries is entrusted both UNEMAP and SCP-RAC to prepare, let's say, a series of tasks in order to design this package of regional measures for its submission for the next COP of Antalya. And what you can see here in this slide is just a summary of the let's say the different let's say activities that were developed in all the process of preparation and design of this package of measures. So I won't go into details because you're having there the different activities, and I don't want to spend much time on this. Of course, if anyone would like to receive more specific information on the different activities that we develop in the process of preparation of these measures, we'll be more than pleased to share them with him or her. Please, next slide. Thank you. So now I'm just going to, let's say, to the most relevant, let's say, issues with regard to the purpose of this presentation, which is about the current draft of this package of regional measures to support entrepreneurs and business for green and circular economies, and that will be, as I was mentioned, submitted for the approval for adoption of the next contracting parties meeting of the Barcelona Convention. So we have come with a package of 12 measures in that sense, and they are, let's say, classified per target. So as you can see in this slide, they are trying to address different type of stakeholders: entrepreneurs, startups, policymakers, and public authorities, business support organization, and last but not the least, financial actors. And in the next slide, I will show you other two measures that have been prepared, bearing in mind specifically, let's say, sectorial challenges in the Barcelona Convention. But first, just go in order to go quickly through these first 10 measures you can see in the slide. As far as the entrepreneurs and startups are concerned, we have, in that sense, identified that the need of a long-term, let's say, group of national and regional programs for specifically supporting sustainable business development is needed. And in that sense, they will need the corresponding policy backup, both at the regional and, of course, national level. Also, as I was mentioning before, the establishment of a community of Mediterranean entrepreneurs for green and circular economy will give more, let's say, will further empower this type of entrepreneurs and businesses who are facing specific challenges and obstacles in the market, because as you should understand very quickly, it's much more difficult for an entrepreneur that is trying to not only create an environment, let's say, an economic value and try to earn a living, but also to try with his or her business to provide also an environmental and social value. It's much more difficult for them to really be successful in the market because they face much more obstacles and difficulties in different phases of the business development that the conventional businesses. So this is why establishing this committee will be absolutely paramount in order to empower these entrepreneurs, and in that sense also to help them to create this idea of Mediterranean community. The third measure is about the need of promoting open innovation. This will be a key tool to facilitate the market along all the value chain in order to scale up a circular economy and also green economy. Another regional measure we consider, which will be key, is as well, of course, the need of establishing a specific regional monitoring and evaluation framework to measure and demonstrate the positive impact on the environment provided by these entrepreneurs and these businesses. And I would like to mention specifically here that the center is already working in developing a specific regional framework on monitoring on an impact on the contribution of entrepreneurs on the mitigation of climate change. So we expect to have some good results in the next 2 years. Another measure with regard to the need of addressing and supporting entrepreneurs is about the establishment of a specific Mediterranean exchange program for entrepreneurs and companies. So, I'm sorry? Sorry.
No, sorry, Enrique, it's me. I was connecting my headphones. I would invite you, to go towards conclusions, or else we won't have time for Q&A sessions from parliamentarians. Although it's very interesting what you're
Thank you very much, Julio. Thank you for controlling my time. So 2 minutes, I will be finishing. So as I was mentioning, the establishment of a specific Mediterranean exchange program for entrepreneurs and companies for circular and green economy. This also will, along with the creation of this community of entrepreneurs and the regional and national support programs, will help a lot to ensure the exchange between, let's say, early stage entrepreneurs and well-consolidated companies on green economy to exchange not only experiences, but also to create possible partnerships and joint ventures. So apart of these measures addressing directly the entrepreneurs, as I was mentioning, we are having others trying to address other relevant stakeholders like the policymakers with this regional policy hub. Also, another specific measure to support the establishment of a Mediterranean networks of business support organization to support the circular economy. And last but not the least, with regard to those measures addressing financial actors, what we will be proposing to the countries of the Barcelona Convention is to agree on the need of establishing a specific sustainable Med Observatory, and also the establishment of a Mediterranean fund to support and to channel funding to entrepreneurs. So please, next slide, and the last one. As I was mentioning, apart from this regional measure addressing specific stakeholders, there are also other three that will be addressing specific, let's say, issues of concern of the Barcelona Convention, like, for example, the one on the need of tackling single-use plastic items to reduce marine litter and stimulate sustainable alternatives through business and entrepreneurship solutions. Also, the creation of a specific framework for sustainable and inclusive businesses within the sector of the blue economy, which, as you know, is an emerging issue in the region. And last but not the least, another regional measure addressing the need of strengthening the access to sustainable products and services, as well as sustainable consumption. So we will, as I was mentioned, submit all these 12 regional measures to the consideration of the contracting parties, and hopefully we'll be receiving the support so that we can advance in this specific challenge in the region. So thank you all for your attention, and thank you, Julio, for giving me the floor.
Thanks to you, Enrique. It was really, really interesting, and I really think that PAM, and especially my panel, will collaborate a lot with your platform, and we cannot buy totally with your point of view that is so precise and includes, as we were saying before, the private sectors and in particular the enterprises. Now I'd like to introduce our next guest, inviting him to stay within the given timings of about 6 minutes, so we can give some time to the Q&A session. And the next guest is Dr. Florian Hermacora, Head of Unit for the Neighborhood Policies and International Relations of the EU Commission, Directorate General for Energy. It's a pleasure to have the European Commission on board with us today. Dr. Hermacora has a long experience with energy policy within the European Commission, where he has been for almost 20 years. Prior to his current role, Mr. Hermacora served as a head of wholesale market, electricity and gas, as well as head of communication and interinstitutional relations in the Commission's Department for Energy. Today, he is going to introduce a key topic in the field of sustainable development in our region, the green energy transition and the connected financial system. Please, Dr. Hermacora, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Julio. Could you hear me?
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
Okay, that's
Please go on.
And indeed, I try to stick to 5 to 6 minutes. I also have to leave then at 4, so that at least we have some minutes for discussion, if at all possible. First of all, I think Professor Talas, he made the point convincingly with facts and figures. This is not speculation. This is science. This is clear that we have a real climate issue and climate problem, and we need to do something about this. That's very clear. The European Union has engaged on being climate neutral by 2050. We have engaged more concretely on reducing CO2 reductions by 55% in 2030. And this week, Wednesday, we will, as European Commission, issue a number of legislative proposals to show how we translate this objective of the 55% by having higher renewables targets, higher energy efficiency targets, extending the emission trading system, foreseeing carbon border adjustment mechanism to create a level playing field amongst the economies in decarbonization. And when it comes to financing, it is very important that now we have, of course, a big economic problem due to the pandemic, COVID, and we should use already the economic recovery funds, which are now becoming available to turn our economy towards decarbonization. This is one point. The other point is that we, as the EU, we only have a responsibility for around 8% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. That's why we are so intensively looking more towards cooperation with our neighbors to have more possibilities, more power to reduce carbon emissions and other emissions. And the southern neighborhood, the Mediterranean, the Gulf region, they are really in our particular focus in this regard. We see, and this is, I think, an issue about economic opportunities as well, a huge potential in the Mediterranean and in the area of the Gulf countries, huge potential for renewables, solar nearly in all countries, wind in most of the countries, and in future also a lot of export possibilities. So there are really good also economic reasons for strong cooperation and for our support for a change of these policies. In a nutshell, what are these policies in question? That's above all energy efficiency, the cheapest way to reduce carbon emissions. It's very much electrification. You will see a big shift towards electrification, much more electricity, because it's quite easy to decarbonize electricity, in particular by wind and sun. Gases will stay absolutely important because we cannot electrify everything. And while natural gas will play a transitional role, we see a big importance for biogas, for decarbonized hydrogen, for renewable hydrogen in the future. What is important is to get things done cost effectively and with secure supplies, because we won't come to decarbonization and to a clean energy transition if we don't do it at least costs and ensuring security of supply at the same time. That's why we need to cooperate. We need to build infrastructures. That's very important. We need to get the right regulatory framework. We need to see open and competitive markets also on green energies. That's for sure the recipe for success. We have seen this over many years with our own experience and with all the data from science as well, that market mechanisms are hugely important. We need to get into place new technologies. For instance, electrolysis for hydrogen, which as such is not a new technology, but the scale we need could qualify nearly as a new technology. We need carbon capture and storage and so on. On the other hand, coal has no future whatsoever. That's important to note. Natural gas will play a role in transition. And we are very happy having seen the Union for the Mediterranean on 14th of June basically subscribing to this. And I just wanted to mention in this context that these measures make also economic sense. That's, I think, an important message for all the people who vote for you as representatives of the countries and the people. Energy efficiency, this pays off over time, create local employment, reduces energy bills. Renewables, you won't find over time cheaper possibilities to produce electricity than through sun. The costs go down, and the same for wind. So it's really not only good for the climate, it's also good for the economy. And overall, I can tell you there will be large possibilities to export renewable electricity, renewable hydrogen to the European Union, because our industries will need more and more, and we are not able to produce all this within the European Union. I think from that point of view, this will be a win-win situation. And just at the end, to stay within at least 7 minutes now, to tell you that we have launched a big program of supporting this transition through a renewed partnership with our southern neighborhood. We will co-finance projects in the areas I've just mentioned till 2027 in the range of up to 7 billion, and we are about to mobilize public and private investments of up to euro 30 billion till 2027. I leave it to this. We have every interest in cooperating with you and stay in contact. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your insights. They were really interesting, especially about hydrogen in Europe. There's a real revolution, and we can see former business leaders in the carbon industry now writing even books saying, "Oh, we were wrong. Let's go into hydrogen because it can really connect also the southern shores of the Mediterranean to the northern shore, because electrolysis is necessary, it's needed, and we need the sun to do that." So thank you very much. And it's good to know that you at the Commission, you have a plan and you have targets. So this is reassuring. Then our last but not least guest of the panel, it's Mr. Antonio Troia. He is Director of International Union for Conservation of Nature Center for the Mediterranean Cooperation, a pivotal international organization when it comes to safeguarding our landscape and natural resources. His work for numerous years in senior position at the Spanish state administration, as well as the European Council and the European Commission. Mr. Troia is going to walk us through the threats to biodiversity in the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf region, and will offer some key policy advice for more efficient management of our endangered ecosystem. So, Mr. Troia, some question: how can nature-based solutions support the fight against the ongoing environmental crisis? Can they impact positively on the alarming trends of climate change and biodiversity loss in the PAM regions? How can our parliaments help fund this and other environmental protection schemes? Please, Mr. Troia, the floor is yours. Just mind to stay within 6 minutes, so we have time for Q&A.
Thank you, Chair. Merci beaucoup, Giulio. I will do it in French, if you don't mind. So I would ask our participants to switch to the most adequate channel, interpretation channel. Okay. So first of all, bonjour, morning, shukran jazilana. And tout d'abord, je tiens à remercier l'Assemblée parlementaire de la Méditerranée pour l'aimable invitation qu'elle a adressée au Bureau méditerranéen de l'Union internationale pour la conservation de la nature, établi à Malaga, en Espagne, et que j'ai l'honneur de représenter en tant que directeur. Aujourd'hui, simplement, je voudrais partager avec vous et essayer de répondre aux questions, amener des éléments aux questions que vous m'avez posées, partager des brèves réflexions sur le concept innovant des solutions fondées sur la nature qui se consolident comme un ensemble d'outils qui vont au-delà de la conservation traditionnelle de la biodiversité en recentrant le débat sur le bien-être humain et l'utilisation durable des biens et des services que nous fournissent la nature. Mais avant tout, rappeler que la région méditerranéenne est reconnue comme le troisième point chaud de biodiversité, hotspot of biodiversity, le plus important de la planète. Comme Méditerranéens, donc, nous avons une responsabilité cruciale envers notre patrimoine commun. Mais rentrons rapidement sur le concept, qu'est-ce qu'il y a derrière ce concept de solution fondée sur la nature? Cette biodiversité méditerranéenne que nous partageons tous, ces ressources et ces services constituent la base qui soutient notre développement et notre bien-être social. Une première conclusion que je voudrais mettre ou apporter à ce débat, c'est que maintenir la fonctionnalité des écosystèmes méditerranéens, tant terrestres comme marins, afin qu'ils puissent continuer à fournir leurs services à notre société et qu'ils puissent également être utilisés comme des solutions alternatives pour atténuer ou adapter les impacts générés par les changements globaux, soit-il le changement climatique, la sécurité hydrique, la sécurité alimentaire ou tout autre, et la vision qui soutient le concept de solution fondée sur la nature. Donc, par ce terme, on entend ou on comprend des actions visant à protéger, gérer et restaurer durablement les écosystèmes naturels ou modifier pour faire face aux défis sociétaux que j'ai mentionnés de manière efficace et adaptable, tout en assurant des bénéfices tant pour la société que pour la biodiversité. Un grand nombre de gouvernements, d'entreprises, secteur privé et d'ONG adoptent de plus en plus cette approche. Par exemple, en 2020, les 2/3 des gouvernements qui ont soutenu l'accord de Paris ont inclus de telles mesures dans leurs plans climatiques nationaux, comme le reboisement, les infrastructures vertes, l'agriculture et l'aquaculture durable ou la protection des zones côtières comme action prioritaire pour l'adaptation ou la mitigation au changement climatique dans notre région. Mais bien sûr, il nous reste un grand challenge. Quel est le challenge? Ce challenge, ce défi, c'est la mise en œuvre vraiment du concept de solution fondée sur la nature. Une deuxième grande conclusion que je veux mettre sur la table, c'est que nous devons nous concentrer sur la façon dont cette nouvelle décennie, qui commence maintenant, doit être la décennie de la restauration et de la consolidation de la fonctionnalité de nos écosystèmes comme catalyseur global de la croissance, de l'innovation. Je parle du fonctionnement de nos forêts méditerranéennes, de nos fleuves et rivières, de nos zones côtières, de notre zone humide tant intérieure, comme vous dire, qui sont le soutien des activités, tant dans le milieu marin comme terrestre, des activités économiques qui soutiennent la société et les activités de la société méditerranéenne. Comment canaliser les investissements vers la nature et les solutions fondées sur la nature dans le cadre de la reprise économique pour faire face aux impacts de ces 2 années de pandémie? Voilà le vrai défi que nous avons devant nous. Un troisième élément de débat que je veux mettre aussi sur la table, c'est que dans ce sens, il y a déjà une proposition sur la table qui est l'initiative de récupération fondée sur la nature. Cette initiative, qui est soutenue par l'UICN et donc je comprends aussi que par tous ses membres, d'ailleurs 15 pays méditerranéens sont membres de l'UICN et presque tous les pays du Golfe et du Moyen-Orient sont aussi membres de l'UICN. Donc cette initiative qui est soutenue par l'UICN dans le but de garantir qu'au moins 10% des investissements totaux dans les plans de relance et de récupération soient orientés vers la nature à travers des solutions fondées sur cette nature et d'autres interventions qui ajouteraient une valeur à nos écosystèmes naturels. La reprise d'une économie méditerranéenne forte et stable est une priorité absolue. Mais quelle est la reprise que nous voulons et quel avenir allons-nous laisser aux nouvelles générations? Différentes options émergent selon les régions, les pays et les contextes géopolitiques. Dans le cadre de l'Union européenne, le pacte vert européen et le plan de relancement vert sont des propositions inédites pour stimuler l'économie et l'orienter vers une relance durable et résiliente, dans laquelle la conservation et la restauration de la nature n'est plus seulement une pièce indispensable, mais aussi un nouveau vecteur et moteur du développement durable et du bien-être de la société. Donc, elle ne peut pas être conçue comme une action sectorielle, je dis la conservation de la nature, mais elle doit être intégrée horizontalement dans la planification économique générale des pays. La perte de la biodiversité et l'effondrement de la fonctionnalité des écosystèmes constituent l'un des plus grands défis auxquels l'humanité et concrètement la Méditerranée est confrontée, étant donné que les services que les écosystèmes fournissent à la société constituent le fondement de notre économie. Contrairement à ceci, les projets basés ou fondés sur la nature peuvent non seulement être mis en œuvre relativement rapidement, mais aussi avoir un effet multiplicateur générant des avantages pour la société et pour la nature. Ainsi, de cette façon-là, à l'obligation éthique que nous avons pour conserver la nature comme être humain, nous pouvons également ajouter le message, peut-être plus compréhensible pour les secteurs économiques et financiers les plus traditionnels, qu'investir désormais dans la conservation de la nature est une garantie de bien-être social et de revitalisation de notre économie. Parmi les mesures de discussion, les solutions fondées sur la nature ont finalement émergé en dehors des cercles de conservation traditionnels et commencent à s'intégrer dans les agendas des décideurs, principalement parce qu'elles offrent une approche efficace pour atteindre les objectifs de la triple agenda climat, nature et développement. Dans ce sens, et en guise d'exemple, le plan de restauration de la biodiversité de l'Union européenne, élément central de sa stratégie pour la biodiversité à l'horizon 2030, intègre clairement le concept de solutions fondées sur la nature, de sorte que la quasi-totalité de ces 14 engagements clés sont alignés sur le concept ou bien l'incluent directement. Également, le programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement lui-même reconnaît que la mobilisation de fonds supplémentaires, la diversification du portefeuille d'investissement et la création de nouveaux mécanismes de financement innovants pour mettre en place des solutions fondées sur la nature sont des étapes importantes pour offrir des opportunités considérables, mais restent encore un vrai défi. Donc, pour relever ce défi et faire face à ce triple agenda, il est nécessaire de repenser notre rapport avec la nature et de transformer notre modèle économique et nos systèmes de marché, ainsi que les politiques d'investissement tant publics comme privés et les systèmes de gouvernance qui les gèrent. Dans ce sens, le principe de partenariat public et privé prend plus que jamais une importance fondamentale pour avancer dans ce processus. Finalement, pour conclure, les actions sociales et économiques requises dans ce moment nécessitent d'une forte volonté politique. C'est le quatrième message que je veux mettre sur la table. Un soutien public fort et des investissements substantiels pour que cette décade soit vraiment la décade de la transition écologique en Méditerranée. Évidemment, ce processus qui nécessite à court terme et moyen terme d'étendre des financements actuels pour protéger nos ressources naturelles et freiner la perte de biodiversité, et dans lequel les solutions basées sur la nature émergent comme un instrument innovant pour aider à matérialiser ce processus de changement et de paradigme, doit être commencé. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention et l'UICN reste, l'Union internationale pour la conservation de la nature, reste à votre entière disposition pour développer les travaux de l'Assemblée. Merci beaucoup pour cette invitation.
Merci à vous pour avoir exprimé un point de vue très intéressant, surtout, je souligne, dans le domaine des finances. Let me go on with the parliamentary debate, because of course we leave space to our parliamentary members. The first intervention is by Mr. Ashour from the Algerian Parliament. Please, Mr. Ashour. Is Mr. Ashour there? Okay, let's go on with a representative from Romania, Honorable Gliga. Bună ziua!
Bună ziua!
Ce faceți?
Bene.
Tutto
bene.
Okay, the floor is yours.
I'm honored to take part in such an important event, and I would like to thank the organizer and all their partners for their commitment to a greener, safer, and healthier planet. As a Romanian MP, I would like to stress the fact that my country acknowledges the importance of the European Climate Pact, and it aims at an extremely ambitious target by 2050. I strongly believe that our transition to climate neutrality will create new economic growth opportunities, new jobs, and new means of technological development. However, this transition will also fuel many challenges, and it is up to us parliamentarians to draft adequate legislation in order to eliminate or minimize all possible conflict issues. Without any doubt, the COVID-19 pandemic reinforced the role of a sustainable social foundation in facing the importance of regional economic resilience and cohesion. Nevertheless, given the specific conditions of each country, we must protect the right of every single state to internally decide on the best path to achieving climate sustainability, depending on the national specificities, limitations, or opportunities. While some of our countries seem to better recover than others in the post-COVID era, it is essential to keep an eye on the well-being of seasonal workers, as well as on vulnerable groups of people, because their future lays exclusively in our hands and the legislation we are pushing forward. Thank you, dear colleagues, and I would like to express my wish to work closely with all of you in our common attempt to build a sustainable environment for the future generations. Thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you, Honorable Gliga. Let's see if we can get in touch with Honorable Ashour. Honorable Ashour, are you there? Well, it seems
he's online, but he does not reply.
Okay, okay.
Okay, President Giulio, I suggest that if we are not able to contact our colleague from Algeria, maybe we could proceed to Honorable Alain Perea.
Okay, very well. So I will have the pleasure to introduce Honorable Alain Perea, PAM Rapporteur for Environment, to provide the closing remarks for this consultation. So, bonjour, Honorable Perea. Please, the floor is yours.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Allez-y, s'il vous plaît.
Distingués invités et chers collègues, en tant que rapporteur de la PM sur l'environnement, permettez-moi de commencer par adresser mes sincères remerciements et d'exprimer ma gratitude à tous les participants. Un remerciement particulier à nos excellents experts. Merci d'avoir apporté des explications précieuses sur les principaux domaines d'action politique qui seront discutés lors des prochaines négociations sur le climat. Vos recommandations politiques sont de grande valeur pour les parlementaires de l'APM qui s'engageront dans une action climatique proactive pour le bien de notre planète et de nos communautés. En effet, notre réunion d'aujourd'hui définit l'engagement des parlementaires euro-méditerranéens et du Golfe en faveur de la coopération régionale pour une renaissance verte de notre région. Il est de notre responsabilité, en tant que décideurs politiques, de répondre aux besoins immédiats, mais aussi à long terme, des générations actuelles et futures. Mesdames et messieurs, dans la région de l'APM, le changement climatique n'est pas une lointaine menace, nous l'avons beaucoup entendu cet après-midi. C'est une réalité quotidienne à laquelle nos populations sont confrontées lorsqu'elles font l'expérience des sécheresses, de l'épuisement de stocks de poissons, par exemple, de la pénurie d'eau et des vagues de chaleur. Dans le cadre des prochaines négociations multilatérales, nous devons corriger le cours néfaste que le changement climatique fait prendre à notre planète. Si nous n'agissons pas ensemble aujourd'hui, nous serons confrontés à de plus grands défis demain. À l'APM, nous sommes conscients de l'exploit monumental qui nous attend. Le solide réseau de décideurs politiques, de scientifiques et d'experts d'organisations internationales de l'Assemblée constitue un forum unique pour identifier et concevoir des solutions efficaces et réalisables pour la transition verte de nos économies et de nos sociétés. C'est pourquoi, dans les mois à venir, l'Assemblée continuera à soutenir le développement d'interfaces sciences-politiques en fournissant des plateformes pour un engagement mutuel entre ses parlementaires et ses partenaires stratégiques. Par exemple, en octobre, l'APM s'associera à l'Assemblée parlementaire des pays de langue turque et à l'Assemblée parlementaire de la coopération économique de la mer Noire pour organiser une importante réunion en personne à Antalya, en Turquie, consacrée à la coopération interrégionale dans le cadre des plans de relance post-Covid. Le ministère turc des Affaires étrangères accueillera l'événement et à cette occasion, les entreprises vertes et la transformation durable de nos économies seront au centre de nos discussions. En ce qui concerne les négociations de la COP26 et de la COP22, l'APM continuera à agir sur un double front. Premièrement, d'une part, l'Assemblée continuera à soutenir ses parlements membres dans leur préparation des négociations sur le climat. Et deuxièmement, l'APM participera activement aux deux conférences en sa qualité d'organisation intergouvernementale représentant la voix des parlementaires de la région Euro-Méditerranée et du Golfe. Au cours de ces deux conférences, l'APM veillera à délivrer un signal clair, comme elle l'a déjà fait par le passé. Les transformations nécessaires pour mettre le monde sur une trajectoire verte ne doivent pas rester de simples promesses. Ces transformations nécessaires doivent se traduire en actions politiques concrètes et concertées. Elles doivent être opérées dès maintenant. Dans le même ordre d'idées, et comme l'ont fait remarquer nombre de nos intervenants aujourd'hui, la transition énergétique verte est essentielle pour mettre notre pays sur la voie de l'agenda 2030 et l'accord de Paris. La voie vers le développement du potentiel intégral des ressources renouvelables dans notre région exige des changements radicaux de statu quo. Dans le même temps, nous ne pouvons pas occulter les obstacles techniques et les tensions régionales qui pourraient subvenir dans ce processus de transformation. À l'APM, nous en sommes bien conscients. C'est pourquoi l'Assemblée jouera un rôle central dans le prochain forum de haut niveau du G20 consacré à l'énergie. L'événement se tiendra à Naples à la fin du mois et à cette occasion, notre président discutera avec ses collègues du Conseil mondial de l'énergie et d'autres experts politiques des principaux résultats des consultations d'aujourd'hui. Dans le même ordre d'idées, en début 2022, l'Assemblée organisera, en collaboration avec la délégation chypriote, une réunion dédiée à la sécurité énergétique et au développement durable dans les régions euro-méditerranéennes et du Golfe. En offrant une plateforme de dialogue constructif et d'échange sur les politiques publiques, l'APM est l'institution la mieux placée pour rapprocher les différents intérêts des acteurs en Méditerranée en s'attardant sur le lien entre la croissance économique, l'approvisionnement énergétique, mais aussi la durabilité et la sécurité régionale. L'engagement constant de l'APM dans ce domaine aidera les parlementaires à avoir une perspective globale mais scientifiquement détaillée sur les défis et les opportunités que le scénario énergétique actuel peut offrir à nos pays. Chers collègues, comme nous l'avons souligné à plusieurs reprises, aujourd'hui, nous acceptons que les ressources naturelles sont limitées. Nous devons repenser nos modèles économiques. Nous avons également entendu que l'industrie du tourisme est l'un des secteurs les plus touchés par la pandémie et la dégradation de l'environnement dans notre région. À l'APM, nous continuerons à travailler avec nos partenaires internationaux, comme l'Organisation mondiale du tourisme des Nations unies et le Conseil mondial du voyage et du tourisme, pour reconstruire le secteur du tourisme en harmonie avec la nature et la biodiversité. Non seulement pour le bien de l'environnement méditerranéen tel que nous le connaissons et le chérissons, mais pour le bien de millions d'emplois et pour la stabilité de nos structures socio-économiques. Si nous n'agissons pas rapidement et n'éliminons pas la pression exercée sur l'environnement côtier et les ressources naturelles, nous risquons de perdre des millions de touristes à l'avenir. Et nous ne pouvons pas nous le permettre, nous ne pouvons pas prendre ce risque. Dans ce sens, l'APM soutient ses parlements membres qui proposent des stratégies vertes pour le plan de relance post-Covid et canalise les stimuli fiscaux vers la protection de la biodiversité et de l'environnement. Mesdames et messieurs, pour finir, permettez-moi de conclure avec 2 points importants. Premièrement, avec son travail quotidien sur le changement climatique et la protection de l'environnement, notre Assemblée s'est engagée à mettre en œuvre les résolutions passées de l'APM sur l'environnement. À cet égard, je souhaite rappeler que la résolution de 2015 de Monaco, qui appelait à l'application d'une taxe carbone ajoutée dans toute la région de l'APM. Cette suggestion a également été reprise par des recommandations politiques que j'ai présentées à l'Assemblée lors de notre dernière session plénière. En effet, l'APM continuera à plaider pour l'établissement d'une taxe carbone ajoutée dans des forums multilatéraux les plus importants. Et d'ailleurs, à cet égard, nous sommes heureux de voir que de nombreux pays de la région en débattent, ainsi que la Commission européenne, qui se joignent à nos efforts pour placer la création d'un mécanisme d'ajustement carbone similaire au cœur du Green Deal européen. Le deuxième point pour conclure, je suis convaincu, et mon expérience au sein de l'APM ces dernières années conforte ma conviction, nous ne pourrons réussir le défi du changement climatique que si nous sommes capables d'embarquer avec nous l'ensemble de nos populations dans ce changement de société que nos travaux d'aujourd'hui mettent en avant. Nous savons bien que le changement des habitudes n'est pas facile. Par ailleurs, beaucoup de personnes dans tous nos pays ne savent pas encore comment ils vont manger à la fin du mois. Alors, la problématique de la fin du monde est bien lointaine pour eux. Nous devons trouver des solutions afin que fin du monde et fin du mois ne soient pas opposés et que nous réussissions à montrer à nos populations que des solutions pour la fin du monde, je pense notamment aux sociétés de consommation, au prix des carburants, eh bien, puissent être un atout pour les aider à améliorer leur fin de mois. Enfin, dans chacun de nos pays, nous avons des cultures locales qu'il faut respecter, même si nous devons en faire évoluer certaines. Or, trop souvent, nos grandes, mais aussi nos petites décisions en faveur de l'écologie ne tiennent pas assez compte des populations locales. C'est pour moi un enjeu majeur de la réussite de notre défi. Chers amis, je clôt cette réunion en vous exprimant à tous ma plus chaleureuse gratitude. Je remercie sincèrement nos excellents experts que je ne vais pas renommer, mais je les salue et je voudrais donner un grand merci à tous les participants qui ont écouté attentivement et contribué au cycle des discussions. En tant que parlementaires, nous avons un rôle crucial à jouer pour influencer le présent de nos communautés et ouvrir la voie à un avenir de prospérité et de durabilité. Je suis convaincu que l'événement d'aujourd'hui s'est avéré fructueux pour tous et nous aidera dans notre rôle délicat pour préparer les prochaines décisions sur le climat de la COP26 et de la COP22. Je tiens aussi à dire merci à notre président Migliore, à le féliciter de vive voix pour sa récente élection, je ne l'avais pas encore fait, Et merci bien sûr beaucoup à l'ambassadeur Sergio Planti. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Alain. As you mentioned, PAM long-standing commitment to environmental protection and carbon neutrality are key characteristics of the work of our Assembly. And PAM will keep supporting its members in elaborating meaningful and concerted legislative measures in order to reach those targets. We have been going through this meeting today, starting from climate issues, passing through some targets that will lead to carbon neutrality. For example, the target of EU carbon neutrality by 2050. We have stated that the involvement of private and public sectors are key to reach those targets. And we have been analyzing and stressing the fact that finance and new economic paradigm are necessary. I really liked what Alain Perea said about tolling the end of the month and the end of the world, because sometimes for people not reaching the end of the month with their salaries, the end of the world seems so far away. But actually, we have to toll these two ends in order not to destroy our planet and destroy the future of our kids. Within one of the most political, diverse, complex, and fragile regions in the world, our Assembly will remain an open platform for climate policy dialogue, constructive exchanges, and information sharing. I would like to thank everyone that participated today in this panel, all the public, the functionaries of the Secretariat, the translators, and I would like to thank everybody to make the seminar informative and vivid, because the exchange of point of view should always be vivid. So I hope to see you soon, and thank you again for meeting and reaching us out today within your busy schedule. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.